go. We're official now as far as the video part of it. Good afternoon and welcome to another Rotary event, another Rotary Day. Glad to have you here on this chilly day. Just to let you know, you know, when the weather changes, it kind of changes my mindset, and so I need you to know I didn't make it to the gym today. That makes 5 years in a row. But we've decided at our house to change the name of the bathroom from the John to the gym, and now I can say every day that I've been to the gym. And, but anyway, that's one of the things. And then I also needed to fess up. About a year ago, I joined the Procrastinators Club, but we haven't met yet. And, so anyway, a little bit of humor. John says very low. I know.
Applications?
Thank you. But we're glad to have you here today. How many of you have taken time to vote yet? Wow, everybody's almost going for the early voting. I apologize with names. I remember the guy that we had here, the head of the Board of Elections. We have a club member that's on that board. And anyway, I was talking with him yesterday when I was there at the Board of Elections to vote. And he said over 13% of the registered voters in Lee County have already, taken advantage of that. So I think it's a good thing. And whether you do it beforehand or wait till that, was the second Tuesday or first Tuesday? It's the second Tuesday, isn't it? Whichever one it is, please be sure to go out and vote. It's our American right and our American responsibility, and so I hope you'll take time to do that. At this time, I'm going to ask for our invocation, and I believe Vaughn's either going to have that or lead us in that.
Okay. Father God, thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you, Father, for each person that represents here, each family, Lord. And I ask, Lord, that you just be with each and one of us as we come and we go. And we are able to tell others about our club, that we are serious about what we do here, that we are serious about meeting others and helping to extend what we do here to them, that we might be able to have more in force, that we might be able to reach out to more and do more projects, that we might be able to do more for the Lord God Almighty. Thank you, Father, and bless us now as we partake of our food and enjoy it to your blessings. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. How about our Sergeant at Arms report?
Thank you, President Morris. Good afternoon, everybody. We have as a guest today from Central Electric Membership Corp. Morris brought a guest, international recording artist James Taylor. Get the joke? Did you get it? James didn't think that was very funny, apparently. But yeah. He's like, yeah, keep it up, John.
You'll be here all week, right?
Yeah, we'll be here all week. Try the veal. From the Rotary Club of Sanford, Sanford Rotary President Daniel Simmons is here as a guest. Daniel, good to see you. Thanks for coming. And announcements. Anybody have an announcement?
I do.
David Spivey.
First of all, I know everybody's been seeing my emails about RLI event, which is November 2nd in Pittsboro. And right now it's on the borderline if that event is going to happen or not. They're going to decide this afternoon. So if anybody wants to sign up, you need to do it immediately, like right after lunch, as soon as you get on your computer. They've got to have at least 20 in order for it to happen. And last I heard we had 9.
We wanted 3 from our club, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, there's a few have registered since Monday, but I think day before yesterday we had 9. So anyway, that's very important. If you want to do that, you got to do it this afternoon as soon as you get back.
Yep.
For Mike, I'll say Camelback tonight is having what they call a vinyl night. If you want to go, bring an old vinyl album, and everybody's going to listen to vinyl at Camelback tonight. So
Cool.
What time does that start?
At 7.
So,
Break out your Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith.
yeah.
Any other announcements? Chris?
Yes.
Chris Kelly.
Next Tuesday, October 30th, Salvation Army is having a golf tournament at Quail Ridge. And it looks like it's going to be beautiful weather. 1 p.m. shotgun start. We'd love to have some of you come out and support. We've got some really nice prizes, and we'll have Wilkinson is donating a car. He's got the car on the 13th hole. You get a hole in one. So come out and take a shot at that. But love to talk. I've got some information here if any of you are interested. And also Christmas related, we started our Christmas preparations, registered almost 900 kids right here in Lee County last week for Christmas assistance. And we're seeking people to help go out and purchase clothing and toys and maybe some bikes for those kids. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to talk with you as well.
Chris, do you know how hard it is just to get on the green of the 13th hole at Quail Ridge?
It's going to be a tough one.
I think you'll be driving the car back, but thanks for the opportunity.
The car will be out there, you just drive right on.
There you go.
All right, Bragg Bucks.
John, why don't you mention about you?
I was going to see if he was going to, yeah. Neil?
Yeah, I got a $4 brag today, $2 for each eye. I had cataract surgery on October 4th. Doctor did both eyes at the same time. For the first time in 58 years, I don't have to wear glasses. Oh, yeah. And I can now wear cool sunglasses.
Thank you, Neil. Any other brags? Oh my gosh, all right, Ed?
I had cataract surgery. I'm still wearing glasses. This is from my alma mater, Purdue, Wallet.
They sure did, yeah.
I got to brag about that. Doesn't happen too often. They got a good quarterback after the first game.
They took it to the Buckeyes, they did.
That was impressive.
Charles?
My wife Martha and my 2 boys and I have been chosen as the North Carolina Tree Farmers of the Year.
Congratulations. Charles. Fantastic.
Where's your tree farm located?
Well, the one that they're using is in Chatham County.
Yeah. Terry?
Since everybody about breaking my eyes, the wonderful eye doctor in the world who used to be part of Jonesboro Rotary Club, Dr. Martin,
Yep.
he taking me in, and now I can see the light.
Wow.
And I want to change.
I think I'll get you some change for that. Jim Miller?
I went to Florida. It's still there. It's hot.
It's still there, right? Yeah.
It's still hot. But I went to this place called the Oaken something. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
But it is a self-pour your own.
Oh, really?
And you buy by the 10th of the ounce. And I spent Monday night there.
Yeah.
Sampled 12 beers.
Yeah.
And went over 2,000.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, 2,200. I made 2,200. So my friend that I was visiting said, you cannot leave until you make 2,200. I cannot leave St. Petersburg.
What do you mean by samples 12 beers?
I had 3 to 4 ounces.
Anybody got a calculator?
And they give you a little readout of how many ounces that you actually had and what each little sampling cost. My 12 samples cost $16.35. And the other thing is Shelterbox screwed up and recognized me as 100,000.
Did not screw up at all.
$100,000 hustler, I guess is the word. That's why you have $100,000. You have 100 grand candy bars.
Did any of the Florida beverages make it to your top 10?
Pardon?
Did any of the Florida beverages make it to your top 10?
No.
No. Okay.
No, absolutely not.
So most of that was about Jim's beer drinking. But in a moment of seriousness, Jim was recognized by Shelter Box for raising greater than $100,000, and he is now in the Hall of Fame. So congratulations, Jim. And thank you very much. It's okay to brag, and Jim, you've earned it, so thank you.
Candy bar.
Thank you for the candy bar. David?
Well, in case you guys didn't realize, it's basketball season.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I'll just give you an update on my nephew. He is on the training camp roster for the Windy City Bulls.
Oh, is he?
So they started that
Yeah.
on Monday. Now, whether he makes the team or not is irrelevant, but
Yeah.
there was either 15 or 17 in
Yeah.
camp, and I think they cut down to 12. So
He was a shooting guard.
find out
He was an outside shooting guard.
playing
Yeah.
he's 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. He's
Good for him.
able to get. He rehabbed and.
You're going to keep us posted, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we don't have a choice.
It was a revolution out, man.
Whether you want or not.
Any other bragging bucks?
Looking forward to it.
Got a good take today. All right. Pass
Thank
it
you.
back to you, President Morris.
Thank you. Just a couple of things here I want to mention to you. We've been asked to participate in a Rotary survey, and supposedly that survey will come to me, and I'll probably forward it to John, who can forward it to each of you. And a lot of us, when we get something like that on our emails or whatever, we're kind of reluctant to deal with them, but I'll find out some more information and kind of give you a heads up notice on that. Supposedly it'll take about 10 minutes for us to do that survey, but they're asking us to participate in that. The other thing, we will change our board meeting. It's normally prior to the first meeting each month, and I'll be away next week. I'll be doing some golfing next week, and so we will have a board meeting prior to the second November meeting. And right now we have all of November programs lined up, and I want you to be thinking anything that y'all have been in Rotary long enough to know what's beneficial, what's enjoyable to have as a meeting, and anything comes to your mind that you can set up, we're always welcome to have that and actually solicit that. So
One of the things that we're supposed to do in November is have a foundation meeting day during that month. So I don't know if we've scheduled one or not, but we've got.
is that what you're talking about for the membership?
No,
That's
that's
different than that.
different. Yeah, we're gonna do the membership review next week, membership development and retention. But you can do the foundation any time during the month, but don't they generally like to have it done in November? So, David or Debbie, I know Debbie's been asked to do a foundation program for other clubs, and she's got an awful lot of background. I mean, we've got speakers in the club that can do that. We don't have to go out to the district to do it.
Well, first of November, first meeting in November is membership preparation. Second meeting, we're going to start our pot of goals. Jim's going to talk with us about that. He has all the information and tickets ready and things for that. And then on the 29th, Jim's also going to talk with us about Shelter Box and go from there. So if we do have the 15th available, I was going to put something together for that, but if we need to do it then. Yvonne has a comment?
Not about that, but in November, we had talked about having an orientation meeting for the new members. And I just wondered if that's still on the books.
Well, about half of the new members have responded to my note, and what basically has come out of that is, please make it convenient, and it sounded to me like that is, and a lot of us said, just tell us and we'll try to make arrangements to be there. So the convenience is generally having something prior to a meeting, a regular meeting, and so we'll review that next week and try to set up. I wanted to have the membership meeting first and then do
the orientation, and so we'll set it up next week.
Okay, okay. And at this time, I just want to apologize to the club, and I accept the blame for this. We opted not to hold the second October meeting because of district training. Many of us were going to that district training. We did go to it. It was very, very good training. I found many things out of it beneficial. But then we also had planned, as you know, we've set into effect about the third Thursday, not having a meeting here during the day, but having a social event. And so we ended up missing the second one in October, and we missed the third one in October, or we intentionally did that one. And I understand there's been some comments that we don't ever need to miss 2 meetings in a row, and I understand that, and I agree with that, and it will not happen again. And I'm not disparaging in any way the training that's held at the district level, but a lot of times it just seems like that occurs on a Thursday. And I think there was a golf tournament. It was a district golf tournament that was held on a Thursday. But our time here together is important, and people are accustomed to it. And when we miss too many of us of the Thursday events, it kind of shakes the foundations. And so again, we won't let that happen again in the future. And I'm not disparaging anything to do with district training or whatever, but our time together here is important, and so we're going to prioritize that and still hold with our third Thursday having a social event. Now, we will be changing in November and December, and we'll be sending this out, but the third Thursday in November and the third Thursday in December, we will meet those, and then we'll defer and not have a meeting on the 4th Thursday because of Thanksgiving and because of proximity to Christmas time. So we'll be changing that in November and December, and then hopefully January we'll get back to our schedule where the third Thursday of each month, will be for a social event.
Go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry.
Anything else come before the club before we have our program? Anything, Van?
Well, what I was going to say is, I applaud your efforts that we won't miss 2 meetings in a row. But we did have some kind of crappy weather too.
That's
you know
true.
What I mean? That kind of fell on those dates.
That's true.
So, you gotta, Mother Nature's.
And on the way back from that, we started noticing the effects of Michael, and in the line of business I'm at, we worked Thursday night and most of Friday to correct that, but that's okay too. But as I just say, our time here on Thursdays is it's important to us. It's important to the lifeblood of the club, and we want to guard that as zealously as we can. So thank you. At this time, I'm going to turn our meeting over to James Taylor. We had put together a little program about a year ago, and for some reason Chris couldn't work it into the schedule, but many of you know I'm a short timer in the work world, and this program, it's about a construction project that we did at Central Electric. He'll talk a little bit about who we are, but it's kind of my final large project. It was about a $5 or $6 million project, and I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with utility lines and things like that, but I've asked James if he would come and talk a little bit about, we recently converted our transmission line from about a 35-year-old wood pole structure line to steel poles, and I thought it was a pretty interesting construction plans and efforts and things like that. So I've asked James if he would to share some slides and share a little bit about that. So this is James Taylor, and he's at Central Electric. He's the Director of Communications and Public Relations. Thank you, James.
Thank y'all for having me today. I appreciate you having me in to give you kind of a behind-the-scenes look at what our transmission project entails. So, disclaimer, I'm not an engineer. There are a lot of engineering things in this, so I'm going to give you a very high-level glance at it. I have some pictures and that we're going to go through. I just want to show you kind of what our crews, how they attacked the project and kind of what went into it. I also didn't realize we were doing brag dollars, but if you didn't notice, I sang the national anthem at Game 1 of the Series. But on a serious note, if I started singing right now, I'd run everyone out of this room, so it's probably a good thing that I don't sing.
In our office, we have a James Taylor and a Janet Jackson. So we're pretty unique in that regard.
I was telling John, sometimes we travel together, and that's quite the spectacle when we are introducing ourselves. Sometimes they don't believe us, but yes, my name is James Taylor. So I like to start out any presentation I do with kind of what cooperatives are. Just a quick question, is anyone in here a member of Central Electric? Woohoo! All right. So does everyone know kind of what a electric cooperative does? I imagine with Morris being here, everyone probably has a better understanding than most groups. We are a distribution cooperative. We are not for profit, so a lot of times people will associate an electric utility with Duke Energy. They're one of the bigger ones actually the biggest one in our area. Duke Energy is a for-profit utility. We are not for profit, so that means that all of our any margins that we generate in the year are returned back to our members in the form of capital credits at the end of the year. So it kind of gives us a difference between investor-owned utilities and makes us a little bit different in that aspect. We serve 4 counties: Chatham, Harnett, Lee, and Moore. And technically, we have 12 members in Randolph County. And Morris was mentioned in the storms during Hurricane Florence, we had 100% of Randolph County out. So we typically don't see when we're looking at our outage numbers, Randolph County never pops up, but then we had 12 members in Randolph County out. So, oh, just hold the press. We have all of Randolph County out. So that was pretty interesting. So we have 22,500 members, 65 employees. We have a 10-member board of directors who are elected by our membership at our annual meeting every year, which we held. It's been 2 weeks ago now. So each year they elect our board, and they, along with Morris, direct the cooperative and make the decisions. And one of these is the decisions they made is the transmission project, which I'll give to you just one second. So this is a map of North Carolina's electric cooperatives. We are right in the middle. And an interesting thing, I put this on here. You can see the landmass in North Carolina. All the colored area, that's North Carolina's electric cooperatives. We serve a large portion of the land in North Carolina, but in terms of number of consumers, North Carolina's cooperatives serve 2 million of the consumers in North Carolina versus 4.5 million by Duke Energy. So we serve a large percentage of North Carolina in terms of the land mass as a collective group. Electric cooperatives came about in the technically 1930s by the Rural Electrification Act. Maybe I can spit that out. Most people, and some of you may know Central Electric as the REA. Back in the 1940s, 50s, when cooperatives were first starting, they were known as the REA, and that's because of that act by FDR. Cooperatives came about because back in the 1940s, if you didn't live in the urban centers, you didn't have electricity. So cooperatives came about to serve those rural areas that did not have electricity. So Central Electric came about in 1941. I put that graph there to show kind of and also you have municipal systems that are owned by city governments, but to show you the difference between cooperatives and investor-owned utilities and municipalities. On average, cooperatives serve 7.5 members per mile of line. At Central Electric, we serve 9 members per mile of line. If you compare that to an investor-owned utility, the average is about 34, and then municipalities are 48. So just to put it in perspective, we serve very rural areas. We have 2,500 miles of line, but we have very few consumers per mile line compared to your investor-owned utilities. So, why I'm here today, we put this presentation together actually several months ago. And in April, actually it was the summer of 2016, we started rebuilding our transmission line. We have 5.5 miles of transmission line that run from a delivery point right outside of Fort Bragg up through Spout Springs. So actually the transmission line, if you know where the food line is there in Spout Springs, Cable Furniture, it runs right through that parking lot. So that's the only transmission line we have. And to kind of give you a perspective, the electric distribution, I guess the entire system, so it starts out at the power station and then it runs down through your transmission line and then steps down at a transmission substation, which then from there it feeds to your distribution substation. So a majority of our system starts at actually, I say majority, we'll just go ahead and say all of it except minus the transmission line starts at the distribution level. And so then we send the electricity down the distribution lines to our member owners. The transmission project that we did is on this level. So we have 5.5 miles of transmission line. So to put it in perspective, Duke Energy has a Woodruff transmission station right outside of Fort Bragg. And they have transmission lines running from Sharon Harris all the way down to the Woodruff station there at Fort Bragg. And then they pick up and they run to our point of delivery, which is called the Manchester point of delivery. And that's where our transmission line picks up, and we run to 2 substations beyond that from that point of delivery. So to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, the project that we did is between the transmission substation level and the distribution substation level. So what it actually entailed is there were 2 things going on simultaneously. Duke Energy, at the same time, the Woodruff station that I mentioned in their transmission line, they were rebuilding all those facilities while we were at the same time rebuilding our transmission line. At the time, our transmission line carried 115,000 volts, and 3.5 miles of that line runs through undeveloped territory. So from our Manchester delivery point up to basically the food line there in Spout Springs, it just runs through the country, and then it picks up and goes through some developed area there. It was originally built in 1978. It was, at the time, 37, 38 years old. The lifespan on that was 30 years, so we had gotten the most out of that line that we possibly could. It was 58 wooden poles and ceramic insulators, and all of that was replaced as well. This transmission line, to put it in perspective of our line, it serves almost half of our membership. So in that area of Spout Springs, we have 9,000 members. So running off of the 2 substations on that transmission line, we serve 9,000 members. So it is a very important and large project for our cooperative. The actual project, we upgraded the line to 230,000 volts, so double the capacity. If you've been down through that area in the last 10 years, you know how fast that Spout Springs area is growing. It's growing very fast. And so I was looking at some numbers earlier today. Anyways, in the last 10 years, our system has grown, or I'd say last 10 years, so starting in 2005 to about 2015-16, we had cumulative growth of about 25%. The majority of that growth was from that area. And a lot of that growth was tied to the load on this transmission line. So back in 2010, we started talking about how we're going to need to upgrade this line to keep up with the growth in that area. So the actual scope of this project started many years ago. The planning, the financial planning, the looking forward to, we're going to need to budget for this and take care of the near future. The actual work started in the summer of 2016 and took about 12 months to replace everything. And actually, they're still working on it today. There's a couple things that they have to go back and pick up here and there. And in this past week, actually this week, they're working on. What is it they're working on this week?
Just some of the feeders coming out of the distribution stations.
But the nuts and bolts of the project, we replaced our wooden poles with steel poles. They have a much longer lifespan. And I mentioned earlier the old transmission line had a lifespan of 30 years, but the newer equipment, the newer steel poles are now, we're projecting that at least 50 years. So it'll be many years down the road before we have to tackle this again.
How many poles were
58. So 58 running from the point of delivery to the substation were replaced with the steel poles. The average price for one of these transmission poles was close to $6,000. So to put that in perspective, just a wooden pole on the distribution system that you'll see out here on the road runs about $900. So from a cost standpoint, it's a very costly project. And in addition to the poles, they replaced the line and the insulators, everything attached to the line.
Are they able to, the wooden poles they used to put on the spikes and stuff like that and climb up them? What about the steel poles? Is there some kind of a special attachment to your shoes to climb the steel poles, or just use the magnet, super glue?
Well, back in the 1950s, 40s, before bucket trucks came around, they did a substantial amount of climbing. The work involved was much more labor intensive than it is today. I'll show you some pictures in just a minute, but a majority of the work that's going on these lines are going to be from transmission bucket trucks that stretch all the way up. If they were to climb a steel pole, that's a good question. I don't know how you would climb a steel pole.
Carefully.
I don't believe there's.
The buckets on these transmission trucks will put you 100 feet up in the air. That's a long way.
If they're having to climb one of these poles, it's gotten pretty bad. So hopefully we'll never have to encounter that.
They helicopter them.
So this is a map. I have a couple of pictures that'll show you. Up top is our Manchester delivery point. This is the Duke Energy in red transmission line that they also rebuilt to their Woodruff Street station. The top of the picture, that's the line that's coming from Sharon Harris Nuclear Station. So their line's coming all the way down, and it keeps on going. Our engineer this morning was trying to tell me where all it goes, but I believe it stretches all the way to Charlotte, and then it keeps on going out towards the east. So it's a very important line. And they replaced their facilities at the Woodruff Street station as well as their transmission line up to our Manchester delivery point. We pick up, so on the right, that's that same line that's going back towards the nuclear station and Docks Road up top. We actually have a substation that comes off of that line, but the Manchester delivery point is where our transmission line picks up. So everything to the left is what was replaced. It's previously 115,000 volts, and it runs 5.5 miles from Manchester to the Spout Springs substation. That transmission line actually continues down Highway 24 to our Johnsonville substation. So we have a majority of our membership is tied to that line and those two substations. So
Is it most of it above ground? What's,
the transmission line,
well, in your whole system, do you have a ratio or percentage of?
I don't know the actual numbers, but a majority of our system is overhead, yes. Now, this little area that's Lexington Plantation. It's a very large and growing neighborhood in Spout Springs. Now, all of that is underground. So
9 out of 10 new services to new homes will be underground.
So
Okay, thank you.
in your neighborhoods and your new
Developments.
newer homes, developments, that's going to be underground. But as far as like our system, the distribution lines, our transmission line, all of that's going to be overhead. But then you pick up from the distribution line and you'll run underground to the homes.
Thank you.
The steel towers that you're putting up, they are, I'm assuming, much more friendly when you have a hurricane or wind than the wooden poles?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
They
they're
can
much
withstand a
more.
lot more?
Those wooden poles were very stable, but the steel poles are definitely more stable.
The primary factor involved with that is a distribution right-of-way is 30 feet and the transmission right-of-way is 100 feet. And it's always the trees on the edge that fall down that give you trouble. So the wider your right-of-way that you maintain, the better it is. And that's the advantage here.
So real quick, I have some pictures that'll kind of put everything that I said into perspective. But that's the Manchester delivery point where our transmission line picks up, and then you see it going out and it turns to the left to go back to Spout Springs. That's a picture of the old line on the left, the wooden poles heading out from Spout Springs substation. That's a distribution line on the right. These are the, over there, question. These are the new steel poles. They come in 3 pieces at the base, in the middle part, and then you can see on the one to the right, that's where the insulators and all hook up, as well as the.
What are they treated? They come looking rusty and they have to treat them a certain way?
That's for lower maintenance in the future.
It's a special metal, and that metal will oxidize 1/8 of an inch and no more. I know a fellow that's a metallurgist, and he explained it to me, but it went right over my head. But basically, it will oxidize and rust 1/8 of an inch, and you don't need to paint it, you don't need to do anything, but it will not go any further.
They're on that one pole, 'cause I've seen them up in the mountains, they're doing Blue Ridge Electric's doing a huge project like this as well, and I see the poles stacked up, and they're half rusty and half black looking, and I didn't know if that was a process.
No, now, the black is what will be under the dirt, at below ground level. Everything below ground level has an additional treatment to it, but anything above ground level, it has that oxidant. It rusts.
It rusts, yeah.
It rusts just a little bit, whatever. I can't say the word either, James.
To give a perspective, my dad used to work at John Deere, and John Deere headquarter building in Moline, Illinois is made with the same kind of metal. So the whole outside looks brown, but
Looks
it was
like
built
that.
like 60 years ago.
Yeah.
So it oxidizes and you don't have to worry about painting and everything.
What machinery you use to pick those things up and handle?
Cranes and a crane on the back of the.
Do you guys have your own cranes and that?
We. So this is, to put it in perspective, this was I'll say the largest diameter pole that we replaced. It was actually at the substation. I'm about 6 feet tall. So that's the base of it. Wow. That held the switches at the substation. So I mean, this is a very, very large pole. They ranged 80 to 120 feet across the line, the new poles, the new steel poles. And that's a picture of that same pole. It's on the far right when it's set at the substation.
Do the steel poles, are they able to be farther apart, less poles?
Yes.
This is a picture of a crew changing out one of the poles. So a portion of the line actually had to do with the line height. We built a temporary line to where they would go just replace all the poles at once through the undeveloped area. But once we hit food line and all those areas, they had to change out some of it while the line was actually still on. So you can see there's 3 buckets. What they did is they had to hook the line up to the bottom of the bucket, and it's quite a sight to see. I'd never seen anything like it before. They pull they're holding 115,000 bolts underneath their bucket, and they're pulling that line off, and then they would cut the wooden pole in half, set the steel pole, and then pull the lines back over to the new pole. So it was just quite a sight to see a pole that tall going up, as well as that 115,000 bolt line just hanging up there under buckets.
With electricity flowing through it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is a close-up of the actual base of the pole. Just a quick FYI, it takes 26 linemen 3 hours to change out one of these poles. So there's a lot that goes into it. This one, they actually, some areas there was so much water in, they had to suck the water out in slurry. They had to bring a steel, we'll call it a column bracket, put it in the hole to keep the hole from collapsing, and put this mix in, because there was just so much water in the hole, to get it to harden up, kind of like, I guess, making concrete. Is the closest thing that I would.
Are they all concreted in?
The one now?
Are they in
all
footings or are they
concreted in?
concreted in?
No.
No.
It's that mixture that he was talking about, plus a gravel aggregate. Normally, with just normal wooden poles, you just fill it in with the dirt that you dig out of the hole. But this is actually a little gravel about that big, and it's all
And
around.
that'll hold that
packed
in the
down.
wind and everything? I
I'm
guess
sorry?
it does. And just that gravel and all, and that hole will hold that pole in.
Yes, but you gotta remember now, normal pole is 10% of the pole's height plus 2 feet. So if you got a 40-foot pole, you put it 4 feet plus 2 feet, 6 feet in the ground. So if you got a 100-foot pole, you got 10 feet, and this, they double that. So all of these holes are at least 14 feet deep. You don't want to fall into that. Like that's 14 feet in the ground, and that'll hold it up there.
Some of the workers that were around those holes, they had chains hooked to them, because they would have to look over and make sure the I guess we call it the drill, is it an auger?
Yeah.
Going into the ground to drill the hole out, and then they have to come back each time with a plumb line to make sure it's going in straight. That's a picture of the new line after it's completed. A couple quick challenges. Have any bird enthusiasts in here?
Red cockaded woodpecker.
That's it.
That guy caused us quite a few headaches. Apparently it's an endangered species, and so where our transmission line is, there's a habitat on that line, so we weren't able to work between April and June during the mating and nesting season of this bird. So that was a challenge for us.
It's very nice of you to let them, do their thing.
At risk of $10,000,
Yeah.
it wasn't
There was,
our choice. But
there's a lot of coercion involved in that as well. There's some endangered plants. You can see this is kind of some of the area that they had to work in. To the right and left, the government came out and marked a lot of plants that we had to make sure we didn't touch. So there's a lot that goes into a project of this nature and scope. And to get through some of those areas, they had to lay down pallets. There was basically a pallet road for 5 miles. It's an enormous amount of pallets. And we had people's backyards we had to go through. Actually, that house was for sale, so they were trying to sell that house, and we had to go in and take the fence down, and just the amount of consumers. That's Lexington Plantation, the neighborhood that's in Spout Spring that's attached to that transmission line. But, again, thank you for having me.
Just a comment. The best thing is the monthly magazine with the president's message. That's the best thing. Look forward to it every single month. Morris always has some
Good
to say.
tips or
Morris, how
something.
much did you pay him?
Hey,
He's on our payroll.
hey, watch it, they'll unplug my extension cord, I got a cord from my shop to their shop, they'll unplug me.
And I'll leave this up here if anyone wants to see it across the show and tell.
There's the extension cord.
This is-
There we go.
This is the line that was previously there. It's 336 ACR, ACSR is what it's called, aluminum.
Center steel reinforced.
Yep. And then this is 76. Anyways, double. So just to give you an idea, 795 ACSR. So to give you an idea of what's there versus what.
So just think about the weight of a 400-foot span of that on there, significant. Thank you, James. Sorry to rush you on that. And like I say, this is my last major construction project, and it's been a success. $5.5, $6 million. How many of us get to spend that every day? But anyway, thank you, James, for being here and talking. We need our drawing now.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
And,
Yes, sir. Today, we raised $62 for the, $31 to the winner. And Mr. Taylor, would you pick a winner for me, please? Last four.
8465.
8465.
there we have it.
What color is it?
Did you have it, Larry? Oh, of course, you raised your hand.
It's mine.
It's yours, Jim.
Jim.
Okay.
All right, Jim.
Shelter box.
$100,000,
Pay for them.
$31.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank
There
you,
you
Jim.
bars.
There you go. See what happens? See when you.
With the winning of the drawing,
If you put in $20 of the $40, you get the money back.
Good odds.
with the winning of the drawing also comes the responsibility to lead us in a four-way test of the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the four-way test. First, is it the truth?
Yes.
Will it build goodwill, better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible,